week on Prepping 2.0.
Has it begun? Are you ready?
We have what would normally be a earth-shattering historical event, a few of them, I guess, and all happen at once now moving into 2021. So definitely make sure your preps are good.
When disaster strikes, will you be prepared? This is Prepping 2.0 with authors and prepping experts Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Online at prepping2-0.com.
Get ready. Prepping 2.0 coming in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher over here at Prepping 2.0. Happy New Year, I think, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so I'm joined here with my co-host in life and co-host on the show, Glenn Tate. Happy New Year, Glenn.
Well, it is a new year. I don't know about the happy part. Yes, this is our first recording in 2021. It was quite a spicy year, but we're going to talk about that. Before we get into that, and before we introduce our guests, we always do the top 100 things. This is on our website, prepping2-0.com, and these are the top 100 things that go the quickest in a crisis. And this list was compiled by some survivors of the Bosnia experience, and so this isn't just academic. This is what they went through in life. We're up to number 95. Holy smokes.
I don't think we need another list.
No.
I think we all know. And we're living it now, right?
Exactly. Yes, the top 100 things that go quickest in a collapse are what is on your grocery list right now. No, I'm just kidding. So number 95, in their experience, they came up with this, paraffin wax. And Shelby, what are some uses of paraffin wax?
Well, in the old days, like when I was a little girl, my mother used it to seal jam. You can use it in canning. It's not necessarily recognized as a safe way to do that these days.
I've seen it with jams and things like that.
Jam, yeah. So, and I remember having to pick wax out of my jam on my toast in the mornings, and that was kind of nasty. Anyway, hoosers, but it can be used for all kinds of things. You can use it to make candles. You can use it to, it's a heat source. It's something to seal things. It's a lubricant in some ways. What have I done? I know when I've had like a rusty screw or something, rub some paraffin. Anyway, I think these are very minuscule uses. So
yeah, I gotta say, let's just be honest?
I'd say
paraffin wax is dumb. Why is this even on this list?
One package of wax just to have in case you need it. Buy candles. It's whatever. So I think it's kind of, for all the things on the list, this is not.
This has been the only dumb one, and it's 95. So at least there's that. Well, I wanted to let folks know, lurkers come out of the shadows. What do I mean by that? Well, there are a lot of folks listening to us on terrestrial radio. Thank you, by the way. We love you guys. Yes. We're on a bunch of radio stations. Love having you guys, especially on our flagship station, KHNC 1360 AM in Colorado. And there are others that listen to us on the interwebs, as the kids call it. They might be listening to us on Spotify or Apple or whatever it may be. And they listen to the regular show and they go, wow, that's pretty cool. They lurk in the shadows. They keep wondering, what is this after show all about that I
think
keep
today
hearing?
It's going to be kind of spicy.
I think it's going to be a great after show. And they're like, I wonder what the after show is. Well, I guess I'll have to live my entire life not knowing, because $2 a month to be a Patreon supporter, it's too high of a hurdle for me. So they don't become Patreon supporters. They lurk in the shadows. Well, this is your calling out. Come out from the shadows, lurkers, and become a Patreon supporter. A lot of cool stuff. Go on the website, see about it. We're not here to talk about all the cool stuff about Patreon stuff. We're just here to alert you that there's a world existing over the horizon, and it's a $2 a month bus ticket to get there. There you go.
There you go. So one thing we always like to do is recognize our awesome sponsors. Thank you so much to all of them. We'll mention them throughout the show today. First one right out of the gate is EMP Shield. Great folks. They have developed a device that you connect to your devices, which can either be your home or your car, and it protects them from an EMP or a coronal mass ejection,
baby.
Ejection, doggone it.
CME, coronal mass ejection.
Anyway,
emission makes sense. I mean, I can see why you came up with that.
Anyway, so
it's not like you said coronal mass emu or coronal mass
education.
Escalante.
Anyway, so go over to our website over there at prepping2-0.com. Click on Friends and Affiliates. There's a link there. Use the coupon code Prepping 2.0 and you get $50 off, which is kind of a smoking hot deal there.
A lot of our listeners, because we get feedback from EMP Shield, a lot of our listeners are getting EMP Shield items. There's a theory that maybe in the first couple months of, God, I hate saying this, the Biden administration, that folks like maybe Iran might be testing a new administration.
North Korea.
And maybe having
China.
some EMP shield protection would be a good idea. Well, we have great guests. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of our guests. We have Brian and Dale of the Duff and Dale Show. Now, they put out a podcast, videos, articles, and here's what's cool. This is something we've never had anybody on the show about, and so this is a gap that they're filling for our listeners, and that is online prepping educational materials. And you need to go onto their website, duffanddale.com, and see what we're talking about. Great resource, great place to go. So highly recommend. One of the things we love doing on this show is telling people about other shows, other websites, other resources, and all that kind of stuff. So a link to duffanddale.com is going to be in the show notes to this show. So we highly recommend that you do that. So I wanted to welcome our guests. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey guys, it's cool to be on your show. You guys were just on ours a little while back, so it was fantastic. So this is round 2. Although I don't know that we'll have a lot to talk about. It's only like 2 weeks into 2021, and nothing's really happened.
It's been so quiet.
It's been so quiet. Hey, do you think the Seahawks will make the playoffs? No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. And so that was one of us, or one of you. Who's the other guy? Let's go ahead and get you to chime in, sir.
Hey, this is Brian Duff, and thanks for having us back on your show, or having us on your show after we did the show a couple months back. And it's I think we have a year's worth of craziness packed into the first week of January. So
I'm ready for 2022. How about you guys?
Yeah.
Already.
I don't know. Do you really want 2022 with the way 2020 went into?
The pattern seems to be they get worse and worse.
Yes.
So everyone knows we're recording this on January 9th, and it will air January 13th. So what we're talking about is the first 9 days of 2021 have been quite a hootenanny. So, gentlemen, 2021, that sure started off with a bang. What do you guys think?
I think it did, man. I think just like we were talking about a second ago, is that we have what would normally be a earth-shattering historical event, a few of them, I guess, and all happen at once now moving into 2021. So definitely for the preppers out there, need to make sure your preps are good if you haven't done so.
Yeah, it's one of those, it's starting off to be the year. I mean, we all thought that with the pandemic and all of that, it was finally all this stuff was starting to become reality. And that seems like it could be absolutely nothing when it comes to the next few months with all the censorship, with the stuff going on in Washington, and the people not trusting the politicians, and the politicians not giving a crap about us. It could be it could be very interesting, I suppose, to say the least.
Well, in a previous episode, Shelby coined a phrase that I'm now seeing all over the place, and I kind of think she invented it. I'm going to be really honest. Sometimes I don't think you invented stuff, and this time I think you did.
Yep.
Seriously?
I've seen memes even.
So what is the phrase you came up with? Because you deliver it better than I do.
2021's looking at 2020 and saying, hold my beer.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the topper. It's, I'm going to outdo you, 2020. Oh, yeah, you and your little COVID warm-up, and you and your little riots and stuff. Oh yeah. Well, I'm gonna pack all that into the first couple days.
First 9 days, man,
of 2021. What should preppers be doing in 2021, guys?
Well, on my side, I look at it as if you're not prepared on a lot of the basics right now, obviously go back and look at those. But this is the pre-apocalypse inspections in combat. They call pre-combat inspections right now. And so if you're not dialing in, and I think we talked about a little bit before the show, if you're not dialing in your social media, if you're not taking into account like, hey, if I haven't already started getting healthy, if I don't come up with an idea to try to make myself as we don't all need to run out to be Olympians, but if you're not working, especially on your athletic side and your personal health side, your immunity side, taking the vitamins and stuff like that, I think you're setting yourself up for a failure going into 2021, especially if things go south and we end up having, any sort of civil unrest going on from 2020 into 2021.
So
yeah,
what?
and
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Dale. It's okay.
Well, I was just going to kind of add on to that and say that it's for me, the two big things that I'm concerned about are monetary, as far as our economic system, and the civil unrest aspect of everything. And the monetary part, I don't know. That could be something that does take years. It depends on how our government decides to reinvent things again and pass the buck down the line. But the civil unrest aspect is one that really concerns me. And I think for everybody, it's different depending on how much money you have and what you do. So I think it's the not being complacent about things, I think, is super important this year, because we've seen with the pandemic that it happens, and this last week that it happens at a spur of the moment, and you never know. So I just think that being ready for that stuff and doing whatever you can now. It sounds a little bit alarmish, I know, but that's where I am right now.
So I want to piggyback on a couple of things that both of you said and kind of just fleshed out a little bit. One thing I've been saying, and we've been working on specifically, Glenn and I, since October, is digitally prepping, preparing a secondary place to, especially for those of us, and you guys are there too, who kind of run a little gig through social media. We run a lot of our Prepping 2.0 stuff through social media, and preparing a secondary location. So we have set up a Prepping 2.0 MeWe page. We've set up a secondary Parler page, a Rumble page. So, because we predicted, and we're not the only ones.
It's not like you're Nostradamus. Quit lording it over me.
Stop it. That there's going to be deplatforming. We've already seen hints of that over the years. We've seen, I think of just some of the other, Alex Jones, all these places big places that have been deplatformed, but it really came to a head just yesterday. Within 3 hours, the current president of the United States, gets deplatformed permanently off of Twitter, Facebook, and then when he attempts to start a Parler page, Parler is threatened by Apple to be deplatformed. I mean, that's when it's like, come in with a bat and then bring in, a Sherman tank. I mean, holy crap on a stick. I can say that, I think, on the FCC. That was insane. So I really encourage people to prep digitally. And one of the things, and I want to say this right now, just for our fans listening out there, we have a huge platform. We have a great community of Patreons. Be aware, if we get deplatformed on Patreon, you will get an email saying, join us over here, a secondary location.
And it's not a phishing thing. We'll be very clear. I keep, once a week, I download all the Patreon email addresses because we have a changing, growing list of them. And if you get an email, we're not kidding around. We're not goofing around. We have an alternate Patreon-like platform ready to go. We're not going to announce it because then some people go over there and it get confusing. So there's all those. What do you guys think about digitally prepping? I think I know because I was on your website this morning, and you have some thoughts on this. Yeah.
My whole thing with this, I think it's a lot more dangerous than people, a lot of people think, it's Twitter. If you don't like it, don't be on it. Or it's Facebook. If you don't like it, don't be on it. But to me, it's kind of pushing forward that whole thing with everybody in their certain little bubbles. And it's kind of like, I don't know if this is a legend or if this is an actual tribe somewhere, but there's a story I heard about, this tribe trying to catch pigs, and they put up, they put food out in the same spot for a week, and then they put up one piece of the fence. And then they keep putting food out, and then they put up the other side of the fence, and then the third side of the fence, until finally it's the front with a little gate on it, and the pigs keep going in there because they get used to it, and all of a sudden that gate shuts and they're stuck in there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what that's kind of an anecdote for everything that's going on in the United States now. But I think that's where we're kind of headed with all this stuff, because these conservatives or whatever, the people that Facebook and Twitter don't want on there, are getting pushed to one side, while the other ones are getting, exactly what they want to hear. But my concern, the dangerous part, I think, is those people that are in the middle that just want that information. As preppers, we're going to find these places, these parlors and all of that stuff. But it's the people in the middle that get so complacent with, hey, it's so easy to just go to Facebook and do this and do that. That's where they're going to get their information. And, I'm not worried about the people on the extreme right. I'm not worried about the people on the extreme left. It's those, and maybe this is the big tech and the government too. They're more worried about the shaping the minds of those people in the middle that kind of, just go along with whatever's going on at this point. That's what I'm concerned about with all this censorship crap.
And controlling that message. By doing that, I absolutely agree with you. They control the message. They make sure that no one hears a diverse opinion on things like, laptops and corrupt relationships and make an informed and make an informed decision on those topics. You get to, if honestly, I look at Facebook and I look at videos on how to, use a cast iron pan to make my steak. I mean, that's what because that's what I'm allowed. Anymore. That's all I'm allowed to do. Anyway, so what do you think there, Mr. Tate?
Oh, absolutely. Digital preps. I wanted to get Brian's thoughts too.
Absolutely.
Brian, you're on deck, sir.
Right on. No, I think it's, I think digital preps are highly important right now. And I think when it comes to digital prepping, understanding how our minds work with what we're seeing happen on whether it's Facebook or Parler or wherever we're at, because right now with the bots that produce information, the misinformation, the information that's suppressed and all this, it becomes, each one of us, it's our personal responsibility to ourselves and our families and everybody to make sure that we're parsing that data correctly, what we're bringing in, that we're not suffering from our own confirmation bias and only seeking out sources that we may like, and that we also understand that when we see something on the internet, one, that a lot of what we're seeing now is clickbait headlines where the article has nothing to do with it. They're trying to inflame people. Two, that your Googles and your Facebooks are money-making platforms based upon all of our information that it uses to market to us with. And so they're feeding us kind of what they want and what they think we want in combination with that. So understanding that if you see something that inflames you, gets you fired up, or you think it's a really good piece of information to know, do some research on that. Go find a couple sources of that information from as close to firsthand experience as you can get. It's what the intelligence agencies do, right? You don't go with single sourced information because you want to independent and corroborating people to come up with a source of or come up with some information and say, hey, so now there we have sort of a nexus. We understand that it increases the reliability of this information. And I think right now with the limitations that's happening on, they went from the president, and perhaps they can make the argument on that. However, it's one-sided, right? We're seeing this slanted. One side's going to do whatever it can to make sure that all the information that is out there is in agreement with what they believe. Well, then literally, like you just said, Shelby, the next day, they not only go after the president and a single individual, a citizen of the country, they turn that cannon on at an entire platform now, trying to control it. And, their thing that they were saying today or yesterday was, well, people in that were in the DC deal going on they were coordinating through Parler. Okay, well, they were. And I don't recall that same sentiment happening when Antifa was coordinating through Facebook. I know they maybe shut down a few Antifa pages here and there, but they were still coordinating this entire summer. Black Lives Matter was coordinating. So that's the worrisome part to me, is we're seeing that unequal application and the information vacuum and the skewed information that it's causing on people who are more inclined with our belief system is getting more dire, and information is king. So I think people really need to dial down on what they believe and do some research on what they're taking in.
That is well said. Let me jump in really quick before we ask our next question, and we'll take a break here in a little bit too. Real quick, just a quick little shout out to one of our great sponsors, Backwoods Home Magazine. Great sponsor. Great way to get information non-digitally, by the way. That's important right now.
It comes in the mail and everything.
Comes in the mail. Every time we get one, I'm like, that headline right there is, it's on the coffee table, and that's an article I'm actually interested in. So encourage you to go to our website again, prepping2-0.com, friends and affiliates. Click on Backwoods Home and use the 6 off, the digit 6 and off, and you'll get $6 off your subscription.
I would like to add another sponsor that we love, Numanna Foods, Numanna, and they make bulk freeze-dried foods. This isn't Mountain House one serving. Well, it says 4 servings, but it's really 1 serving when you're out hiking. You know what I'm saying?
When you're Glen Tate, yeah.
It's not like single meal stuff. It's like big family packs. A great way to layer your food preps and have a bunch of bulk freeze-dried foods. NuManna.com, and you get 10% off if you use the coupon code PREP, which is all in lowercase.
So, next question though, what are your guys' thoughts? And Brian, is with what you were just talking about with the storming of the Capitol, the Senate Hall this last week, and the twisting the media that's coming out about that. And I'm thinking about what you just said about the whole kind of making of the sausage of messaging. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's the same deal. Is we're getting such biased information that people aren't applying like their general values to all the information they see. They're switching up and their values based upon whether it aligns with their beliefs or whether it doesn't align with their beliefs. And we saw all summer long the mainstream media just act like there was no rioting going on. Oh no, these are peaceful protests. They're like, well, they're burning down the city. Well, I think we have to, I look at it is in order to have the best information and understand the best way that I'm going forward is I have to apply the same set of rules to everything. So when I see people going in and bashing through the windows inside Congress and going in, I'm like, okay, well, you guys are now doing that same stuff. Are we all going to report it the same? If we're not, if people aren't going to report on it the same, I need to know that going into it. So when I read that information that they're giving to me, that I understand their perspective, so I can understand how that is parsing, again, how that's changing the information from, if you look at a base reality of what exactly happened to what I'm reading, so that I can maintain a level playing field in my own mind when I go across all the different, from the left to the right, the different sources of information out there. So I understand what my perspective is based upon other people's biases.
Okay, we have a couple more seconds before we go into our break. I just wanted to amplify what you're saying, Brian, and say, remember, there's clickbait. Remember, people want to manipulate your emotions. And when we say digitally prep, we don't just mean go and find more right-wing news sources. What we mean is call out sources that are not reliable, and every story on that you read about how Trump's going to impose martial law and there's going to be an aircraft carrier that's going to invade DC and everything's going to be cool, start getting rid of that kind of stuff too, because it is not informing you. It might be hitting a dopamine button in your brain and making you believe what you want to believe. It's not information. Just go clear-eyed into it.
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to talk about too, and you have only about a minute, so we're going to kind of slide into our break here. When you come back on the other side, let's think about, and I'm talking to our listeners now too, think about this. We are today's date, January 9th. This is just the beginning. We have the rest of the year to go through. And I personally believe, and I'm going to see what Dale and Duff think about this, the pandemics aren't over. Just because we have a vaccine and just because we have, mandates being lifted doesn't mean it's not over yet. So we have a whole lot of other things to talk about for the rest of the year. And folks, we're preppers. We want to talk about these things so we can think about how to apply this to our personal lives, to our families, and make sure we're covering our bases and we're preparing for what's coming. The collapse is happening. It is happening right now, and it's happening at a faster pace. So don't go away. We have so much more to talk about on the other side of the break.
More Prepping 2.0 with authors Glen Tate and Shelby Gallagher is coming right up. Hear all our previous shows free online at prepping2-0.com.
Shelby Gallagher here. We found that you need to layer your food preps.
Yeah, this is Glen Tate here. A lot of times the hardest part of layering is the long-term foods. We love NuManna foods, which have a 25-year shelf life and are non-GMO. Also, organic meals are available.
NuManna comes in family-style portions and in bulk. This is not backpacking food. It's family meals that last for at least 25 years. The perfect freeze-dried part of your food layering.
You can get a sample of NuManna meals for $19.95 and see for yourself. You will be amazed.
Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount by entering the code PREP.
Go to NuManna.com or click the link on the Prepping 2.0 website.
Give it a try. NuManna.com. That is NuManna.com.
When the grid goes down, darkness will descend fast. Used to be there was nothing you could do about an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, or CME, coronal mass ejection. Now you can protect your electronics, protect your family, thanks to EMP Shield. EMP Shield invented a simple-to-install device that prevents whatever's connected to it from frying in an EMP or CME, and it costs just a few $100s. EMP Shield has been tested by independent laboratories and passed muster with the government, which has ordered lots of them. Google EMP Shield and see for yourself. And save some money. Get a $50 discount per device. Go to prepping2-0.com. Click on the Friends and Affiliates page, then click on the EMP Shield logo. At checkout, use coupon code PREPPING2.0. It's all one word.
Abe Lincoln here. In 1773, patriots broke the chains of British tyranny by throwing tea into Boston Harbor. On that day, Americans began drinking coffee. We celebrate that event daily here at Minutemen Coffee. All men are created equal. Coffee is not. Minutemen Coffee is roasted to perfection in small batches. Bold, smooth, and never bitter. Shipped to you fresh daily. Whole bean, ground, or our patented pods. www.MinutemenCoffee.com.
Prepping 2.0 is about that next level of prepping. One of the key 2.0 items to have is bulletproof body armor plates. I used to think body armor was too tactical for a regular guy like me, but it isn't. Give yourself, your family, and your team an unfair advantage when bullets are flying. Body armor used to be expensive and hard to get. Not anymore. KD Armor, and that stands for Come and Take It, makes solid and affordable body armor for normal people. Get body armor while you can. The clowns in Congress are trying to prohibit future sales. KD Armor is the place to get it. CATI Armor.com. Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount when you use the coupon code GRANT.
PrepperNet, where preppers unite. Looking to meet other like-minded people in your area? Looking to start your own prepper group? Already have a group? Join PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet has gathered the biggest names in the industry to help unite preppers everywhere. Join John Jacob Schmidt, Scott Hunt, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, Glenn Tate, Shelby Gallagher, Charlie Hogwood, Samuel Culper, Survivor Jane, Rick Austin, Franklin Horton, Ryan Mitchell, and Brian Duff. Our team is united. Check us out at PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet, where preppers unite. PrepperNet.com.
Now, more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome back, everyone. This is second segment of Prepping 2.0. Real quick shout out to one of our awesome sponsors, Minutemen Coffee. Love them. I'm jacked up on them right now.
Yes, you are.
Oh, my goodness, gravy. Enjoy them. And it's a great blend that they've developed just for us over here at Prepping 2.0 called I Miss America. That's a really tasty and meaningful blend right now. Go over to our website at prepping2-0.com. Use the phrase I Miss America at checkout and you'll get 15% off. And their roasters have not stopped working for about the last month. So awesome folks over there. Great folks. Love them.
It's a tasty and meaningful blend.
It is. It very much is.
That's great. Well, we've been talking with Brian and Dale of the Duff and Dale Show. And guys, before we get started in the second segment, how can people learn more about you and your thoughts and products?
Well, we've got our podcast, which is available anywhere in all of the different podcasting apps and stuff like that. We've got our website, which is duffandale.com. We have our YouTube channel. You just go to YouTube and search for Duff and Dale. We do a lot of our shows live there, and then we broadcast the audio versions of those out. And we also have, as you were mentioning earlier in the show, the bugoutlocation.com, which is basically a lot of prepping courses. A lot of the stuff in there right now is a lot of the beginner type stuff. But as we're working on that quite a bit, and we're going to build that up more to the the deeper stuff that's involved with preparedness.
The 2.0 stuff.
What's that? Yeah, the 2.0 stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's just a cool place to get all that information in one spot. It's nothing new, It's not like we have some secrets or something with preparedness that nobody else has, but it's all in one spot, and it's a way to help us out and help keep us on the air doing the things we do. So
awesome.
Well, Dale, in the first segment, you mentioned something, and then we went and talked about digital preps, which is good because digital preps, especially this week, with the president being kicked off of stuff, is a big deal. But Dale, you mentioned for 2021. The two things that came to your mind the quickest were monetary issues and civil unrest. And I wanted to ask you to expand on that. The monetary issues, I assume you mean inflation and things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, just with the whole pandemic thing and with this inclination to lock everybody down. And, we can fund gender studies in Pakistan, but we can't keep restaurants and businesses open here. That eventually is going to have an impact one way or another. And Brian talks about the modern monetary system, which is basically their way of the government's way of an excuse to jack up the debt as much as they want. But at some point, we all know that the bubble's going to burst and, that it's going to come due. And when it does, who knows what that all looks like. So I think more than ever, I mean, my feelings on an economic collapse have been strong for as long as I can remember, but it seems like it's escalated now. So I think it's just really important to do whatever you can, depending on your budget and all of that stuff to kind of get ready for that as much as possible. It's a really tough situation. Some people can't. It's just a really, really tough situation, but it's got to be at least thought about, I think.
Yeah. Well, here are a couple things that I think people could at least think about in that. And you're right, everybody's situation varies. One is gold and silver. We are big fans of gold and silver here. We've done a couple shows with Joe Jaquint of Patriot Trading Group, and we don't make any money from him. He's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
We buy gold and silver from the guy. So I want folks to think about gold and silver. The reason is gold and silver captures value. If you have $1,000 of today dollars and you buy $1,000 worth of gold or silver, and then the dollar goes wacky and it's worth a tenth as much, well, the gold and silver will be worth roughly $10,000. It's a way of like, oh, you know what it is, Shelby? It's vacuum sealing and capturing the value of dollars today, and then you can have it for tomorrow. And of course, you diversify, you don't put it all in gold and silver. That's wacky, but just to have some of that. So that's one thing that we think. And then the other one, and this covers everything, and you alluded to it, Dale, and that is lose normalcy bias. If you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm going to use an example. I've always put money in the 401k. I've always done this. I've always done that. Golly, I don't want to think really hard. I don't want to do anything risky. You're right. Try not to do risky things. But if you lose your normalcy bias about your finances, you're going to be way better off because we're dealing with an entirely new set of facts here. For example, a lot of people want to pay off that mortgage as quickly as possible. And in some situations that makes sense. But if you've got a mortgage at, say, 2.75% and inflation is 2.75% a month, go ahead and pay that mortgage back in inflated dollars and all of that. So I'm not saying do one thing or another. I'm just letting folks know, I think now, especially in 2021, when the stakes are so high, everybody needs to reevaluate the way they've approached things, and they need to be cognizant of normalcy bias, and they need to work hard to break it. So those are some ideas. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that's 100% spot on. Is we're in unprecedented times, and in unprecedented times, a typical response to those times that you would have had when times were somewhat more normal doesn't necessarily apply. So everything's on the table. They are switching things up. And I just read today that in the Wall Street Journal, or was it today or yesterday, that Biden's looking at putting in new laws regarding domestic terrorism. And guess who those are focused on? So understanding that our playing field, we're playing three-dimensional chess right now, and that our playing field is changing all the time. And so we have to be flexible enough not to be in the mindset of having the constraints that we had of thought that we had a year or 2 or 5 years ago of this is how the world works. We've talked about COVID, everything is on shaky ground, and we need to walk on it and approach our lives as if it's on shaky ground.
Well, one of the other things Dale brought up, he brought up monetary, he also brought up civil unrest. And here's a thought that Shelby and I have on that. And that is, we've talked for years, literally, about civil unrest and how to defeat it and how to protect yourself. It's always been focused on things like guns and other cool things like guns, because guns are cool. But no, guns, ammo, magazines, training, comms, and all those other things. I want folks to, think afresh now and lose some normalcy by it. It isn't just about guns and stuff like that. First of all, you can't buy any guns right now as a practical matter, or ammunition. So you're going to need to think more about it. I want people to, going into 2021 with the civil unrest concerns that we saw played out at the Capitol on January 6th.
Well, and played out on the streets of U.S. cities for most of 2022.
That's true, or 2020.
That too.
Yeah. She can see into the future. That was a slip.
It was a slip, but
yeah.
it might
Nostradamus.
apply. It might apply. But anyway.
But I just want folks to think about community. It's the last sort of gap to fill in, I think, when it comes to how do you prepare for civil unrest, because you've probably done all the other stuff. And if you haven't done all the other acquisition stuff like guns and ammo, you can't anyway, so you might as well do something productive. I think working on community, knowing who your neighbors are, an area study. Sam Culper, Forward Observer, he's been a guest on several times. He's talked about doing an area study, which is just a fancy word for knowing about your local area, looking at some maps, figuring out some demographic and political stuff. So what do you guys think about preps that people can do in 2021 for civil unrest that might be more tailored to what we're seeing in 2021 and not just the same old stuff of like have a battle rifle and 1,000 rounds?
Yeah. I think, do you want to go, Brian?
No, go ahead, Dale.
Okay. Well, I think all of this stuff with the stuff that happened at the Capitol, I think there's a much bigger issue than the election that's completely getting ignored. And that's a lot of people. And as Shelby talked about too, with 2020 and all those riots, people are frustrated and people are mad, and it goes way beyond that stuff. And that's why I think that this whole civil unrest thing could get a whole lot worse coming up. And it's so many people have voices these days that, you talked about having community and stuff like that, where 20 years ago, we talked to people at church. We talked to people, we maybe went to the range or we did stuff like that. That was our bubble, basically. Nowadays, it's kind of like high school where you have the bullies, but instead of just a few bullies, you have thousands of bullies. You have thousands of the know-it-alls. You have thousands of the tattletales. You have, everybody gets inundated with all of this information these days from different sources. And I think it's too much for humans to handle, because subconsciously it does change our opinion. So I think that's kind of why we're in this situation where everybody's just so bent out of shape and fed up. Plus a government that acts like they don't care about us. But it's one of those situations where I think home security is a big deal. I think doing the stuff that is going to protect you, that operational security, the situational awareness, and getting to know your neighbors. A lot of us don't know our neighbors because we don't have to go out and say hi anymore. We just get on our phone and talk to our friends on Facebook and all of that. So I think all of that stuff is really important, because if something does start up, those neighbors are either going to be allies or foes, and you've got to figure out now which ones they're going to be.
Well, and I think that a big monkey wrench was thrown into our ability to create community, and I think it was on purpose with COVID. When we're being told, depending on where you live, you need to, lock down, stay at home, stay safe.
You can't go to church specifically.
Can't go to, public meetings or community meetings. I think there was a layer of isolation that was placed on most American people, and and you guys, we can go that direction, and we'll carry this in the after show. But I think there was a forced isolation, and I think we're going to start seeing more civil unrest related to, and we're starting to see the inklings of it, related to people getting tired of being locked down and tired of this, especially when we have a vaccine, especially when we see that it's not as serious. And we're starting to see this new strain coming from Europe. And oh my goodness.
Who saw that coming? And I see more lockdowns. And I see the ability of government to control the population with fear mongering with this pandemic, it really isn't a pandemic anymore. It's a flu season. But anyway, I've said enough there. But the whole idea of community being thwarted in 2020 and it being weaponized in 2021 by government. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right. I think we're at the point where it's the rule of the Caesars, right? It's bread and circus. So the lockdowns, the virus, the political campaign, the conspiracy, all the stuff that's going on being pushed out by mainstream media on one side or the other has everybody just, we're divided as it is. Now you have people, many of whom have been in fear. I mean, think about like right now we have one side that fears the virus more than the other side does, but that other side, while they fear the virus less, fears government coming after them or what is going to happen moving into 2021. So everybody is, for the most part, up in arms. They're fired up right now. And we're at that point where stuff is, we're not aligning with other people. We're not seeing what other people have to say. And like we've talked about earlier, was you have to have the atmospherics. You mentioned Sam Colper and the Intel stuff he pushes out. You have to have the atmospherics. Dale mentioned just a minute ago of getting more involved in your local community, knowing what your neighbors are talking about, knowing, hey, this is someone I need to watch. Not only that, but what does that person have to say? Are they representing a big segment of your local community? And that's how these people feel. And so I think when we isolate, we really do ourselves a disservice of what's going on around us. And it's that understanding of what's happening in your community that will let you clue in whether is civil unrest in my local area getting ready to kick off. And then working on, if you haven't taken, a lot of people, because, Glenn, you mentioned normalcy bias, a lot of people have not secured their homes. They haven't put door armor on their door to keep their front door from kicking in. They haven't reinforced the hinge size with long hinges. They haven't looked at putting shatterproof or shatter-resistant film on their windows, spring loads on their doors so their doors close and that they have combination locks that they can get in. There's a bunch of stuff. If people have put it off just because we suffer from normalcy bias, where we don't want to deal with the stress of what's going on around us, and so we act like everything's normal and we don't address it. I think people are could be in for a rude awakening coming up, and we don't know what the ability to get things, to have things done down the road looks like. So I would try to work on it without going in debt. I would try to get as much squared away as I can with as little cost as possible, understanding that we're looking at a residential possible mortgage crisis coming up and a commercial mortgage crisis that feeds into the rest of the financial chaos we got going on right now.
Well, Brian, and you were talking about civil unrest and community, and all good points. I'd like to add something to that, emphasis really. This is a huge topic. I'm not going to start, but I'm just going to mention the topic to get people thinking about it. And that is, we were talking about know people in your community, know what they think, know what they're like, harden your doors in case there are bad people in your community. You guys might want to think about, speaking of getting rid of normalcy bias, being in a new community. The whole relocation topic, which again, I don't want to dive into because it's a huge topic, but I'll be candid, and we've mentioned this on the show. It's no secret. We live in Washington State. We're having some discussions within the family right now. Maybe Washington State, a hard blue state, even though we live in a rural part of it, maybe isn't a good idea. So when we're talking about community, you need to know your community for all the reasons previously mentioned. You also need to be open to the idea of maybe being in a community where nobody's going to kick down your door because they're all roughly like you are. Let's be honest. So I just wanted to put that out there when it comes to community. Well, Brian, we've been talking a bit about the monetary system, and I know you have some thoughts on this, and you are good at explaining this. What's the deal with the monetary situation we might be looking at? And I know Dale has thoughts too. So that's, I guess, the topic. We keep talking about it, inflation, and we kind of skip over it. I mean, why might that happen? What would it look like? What should people be looking for as signs that maybe the monetary system is going awry? Yeah, so it's an article I did over on my website, and Dale and I have talked about a few times now over on our Duff and Dale show. And it was a few months ago, I started hearing rumblings on the far left about this thing called modern monetary theory. And they're like, oh, this, is a way that it's going to fix all of our problems. And I'm like,
I'm game for figuring out some way to fix our problems if somebody has an idea, because obviously our elected representatives haven't been doing such a great job with fixing a lot of our problems, much less our financial problems. So I researched modern monetary theory, and my takeaway from this is they have basically cobbled together, and again, this is the far, well, it's getting mainstream on the left now. They've cobbled together a new economic theory, and I believe it started in 2008. And it you can trace it back, but where they're really formalizing it started in 2008. Now it's really taken up a head of steam. And the modern monetary theory is a top-down theory approach to how they do economics. And when I say top-down, is the new theory is whenever the government needs money, if it wants to fund gender studies in Pakistan, and just on a side note, remember, we're not giving $10 million to Pakistan to study gender. We're giving $1 million to some corporate lobbyist that has a company that's going to go possibly tell somebody in a country that believes in stoning women to death, talk to them about gender. Anyhow, the issue with the modern monetary theory is if they want to fund those $10 million for a gender study in Pakistan, the modern monetary theory, MMT, says, let me just the government go and just print the money. And not even literally print the money. That's only about a third of our money, right? A quarter of our money. Really, most of our money is ones and zeros in a computer. So literally, the government taps the keyboard and makes $10 million. And then when they want to send $1 billion to another country, they tap the keyboard and make $1 billion. Well, modern monetary theory states that as the deficit increases because they keep just spending, and it says that the government should do that spending because it's what the government feels it needs or wants, that when the deficit gets too high, the way they reduce the deficit is by increasing taxes. And the more you read in modern monetary theory, it's not that they actually consider people. Literally, people and workers are the vehicle for controlling the government's out of control spending. And they literally look at taxation as removing money from the economy to lower that deficit. There's nothing in there about budgets. It believes that a nation doesn't even need to operate on a budget. It doesn't believe that the taxation that we bring into it, the four of us sitting here, that we pay our taxes, that the government should count for its spending dollar for dollar. I mean, we haven't had a budget in the United States since 2006. We're doing these continuing resolutions. And when we hear about these continuing resolutions, both sides get fired up. But let's remember what continuing resolutions are. It's the government creating a firestorm about the government not being able to continue operating. It's literally the government setting it up, and we all get fired up whether the government should shut down or not shut down. Again, this all feeds back into now they're literally saying, no, just print whatever money you want, come up with whatever money you want, and when we need to control it, we will take it from the people. It's quite. I recommend everybody start researching modern monetary theory, because you're going to hear more and more of it as a justification to why out of control deficit spending is a good thing.
Sounds like slavery. The king gets to do stuff that he wants with the money, and the serfs have to work hard to make it happen. I mean, to boil it down, sounds like slavery. And this would not only create huge taxes. Of course, we're going to see that in the grits teeth Biden administration, right? We're going to see high taxes, but is there an inflationary component to this? Because that would really affect people in the sense of they could buy hard assets now, like canned food. I'm dead serious as far as that being an asset. Buying stuff now. We had Furfall on from Argentina, and he talked about this when Argentina was going through this in the year 2000, 2001. Is there an inflation component, or is the downside of this modern monetary theory simply really high taxes?
Yeah, I don't know if there's an inflation component, because literally, again, it doesn't take into account. It does everything that I read on it. When you get done synthesizing, and you're 100% right, spot on, it's slavery. They look at it literally as the production of labor. That's what they taught, people's production of labor. And so they're just like, let's take that. So I don't believe that they really even care about the inflation. because again, we're not what drives the economy. We're not the people that make the economy, where if they balanced the budget, they would say, hey, we took in $1 trillion in taxes. That's what we have to spend, $1 trillion, or, go in deficit, and we could figure that out, how we do that. We're literally the thing that keeps the economy keeps them happy up there and keep the deficit down. That's all we are when you read modern monetary theory.
Well,
there is an aspect of it. I'll be real quick, Shelby. I'm sorry, but there is an aspect of it that is the inflation part of it, because they need us as Americans to be basically, like I've stated before, the tax chimps. They need us to keep producing, keep running the machine, keep doing this stuff. And if we don't have trust in what our dollars are, not their dollars, then it does become useless. And then it does lead to that hyperinflation stuff. But that is one of those problems that they choose to just kind of put on the back burner. And that's a worst case scenario type thing.
It sounds to me like they have inflation. They'll look at you with deer in the headlights, like oh, we haven't considered that as part of our whole theory. Interesting. Right? Yeah. Whew.
Well, on the inflation note, remember the inflation won't affect them. It
exactly.
might affect them as individuals on what they spend, but for the 5 richest counties in the United States, are all within a stone's throw of Washington, D.C. So it's their perspective is skewed. So it will affect us, the individual, but it won't necessarily affect them.
Well, if anything, inflation is good for them because they can pay back this deficit, like by printing bonds and stuff like that, with inflated dollars. So they love inflation.
So as we get ready to wrap up our regular show, just want to give a quick little shout out to our final sponsor. Seems kind of apropos today. Cati Armor, CATI, stands for Come and Take It. They provide basically everyday body armor for the everyday guy and gal. If you go over again to our website, prepping2-0.com, friends and affiliates, and click on them, use the coupon code GRANT at checkout, and you'll get 10% off. Especially with some of the things I've seen on our headlines and on my news feed, seems like a good purchase.
Well, and I would add to that, body armor is on the list of the many things that the communists are going to try to outlaw. So you might want to place an order now. And in fairness, I got to say to our listeners, Cati Armor has a backlog of orders. It's a fact. So many people are ordering body armor from every company. So be patient with Cati, but I would suggest placing an order now because this stuff might be against the law to buy, not to possess. So consider that, guys. You might want to put some of those inflated Federal Reserve notes into body armor, which is something you can really use.
So as we get ready to go into the after show, I always like to kind of take a deep breath and go, oh my gosh, 2021 is going to be... It's going to be dicey, but we're prepared. We're prepared people. So, as always, the great quote from Benjamin Franklin, one of our founding fathers, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Folks, everyone, have a great week.
You've been listening to Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher. All the information you've heard today, including all our previous shows, is online at prepping2-0.com. Find out more about Glenn's books at 299days.com and Shelby's books at agreatstate.com. Until next time, be smart, be safe, and be prepared.